I'm glad you came to learn about our local history tonight. You can call me Aunt Hattie. I was born in 1854. I was born during slavery time. When I was growing up, black folks and white folks wasn't buried in the same cemetery. Uh, I worked for the Depps, and for many years decided that they was buried in the oldest part of the cemetery. I'm nervous, y'all. They was buried in the oldest part of the cemetery. The tombstones are very old and not marked. So you can see my name. You can't see my name. In fact, when slaves were freed, many took last names of their owners. A slave who was sold several times had many last names. Some masters were mean, but if you were a slave, watch out, because if your master corrected you and you died, the master would be let off scot-free because you couldn't prove that a man would destroy his own property. Owners wanted slaves to marry someone in their own choosing because they would be more settled, less likely to run away. If they married, they would raise children who would turn in to belong to the owner and become a slave also. In those days, it was against the law for slaves to be educated and feared they book learning slaves would figure out a way to escape. I recall that Miss Depp was fond of me and she saw to my schooling, even though I didn't really like school. Monday through Friday was working for the master's family. On Saturday, there was a little time to wash and clean and work in our own gardens. Sunday was a day of rest and worship. I lived a good long time and I wasn't afraid of hard work. It was the Lord that kept me going for a long time. I couldn't do it by myself. He took care of me. I'm glad you stopped to learn about what things used to be like before you were born. Now you skittle-daddle, there's your judge down the way.
Hello, I hadn't seen this kind of crowd around my grave since I think the day I was born. Buried, I mean. It was a big crowd then. I'm George McNeil Bohannon. I've been here since 1927, January 1927. My wife is here with me. My mother and father, all my daughters are buried here right around me, so it's a nice place to be. I was born in 1854 in Hart County. My father was county judge in Hart County. My brother was circuit court clerk in Hart County. After I got out of law school, I opened a law office in Glasgow. And I was a very young man. I loved Glasgow. And then in 1884, I was just 30 years old, I ran for county attorney. And I won. I was surprised, really. And then I was reelected in 1888 to county attorney. Then in 1890, I ran for county judge of Barron County. My father had been county judge of Hart County, and I won. And I was elected 9 more times as county judge. I was elected 10 terms as county judge and died in office on January 1st, 1927. A lot of changes took place in Glasgow and Barron County between 1890 and 1927. When I started out as judge, it was strictly horse and buggies and wagons. We were a progressive county. In the 1890s, we built a fine, modern new courthouse. I think you're going to see Adolph Rapp, I believe. He's buried up here behind me. He took a picture of the courthouse. Awful proud of the courthouse. I hope he shows it to you. If he doesn't, then criticize him, if you would. One of his better photographs. But during my term in office, we went from horse and buggy to motor cars. People wanted roads. I was, as county judge back then, I was a judge like a judge that you'd Judge Alexander or something. held court, had jury trials, sentenced people to jail. I was what you might call a gavel judge. But frankly, I spent most of my time working with fiscal court building roads, because that's what everybody wanted, the farm to market roads they were all hollering for. So you might say I was also a gravel judge, gavel and gravel judge. I loved the job. We had lots of good roads built while I was in office. We went through the Great War, the war to end all wars. A lot of young men from Barron County fought in the trenches in France. Many of them were killed, many of them were maimed. The year I died, you all probably remember 1927, at least from your history books. That was the year Lindbergh flew his airplane across the ocean. As after I died, I wish I'd been around to see it. That was the year Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. A lot of things happened during my time here. And I appreciate you being here. It's the first time I've stood up in a while. I'm getting kind of tired again. I think I'll rest again if you don't mind. Hope I see you again sometime. Thank you.
I'm Sandy Gorin, and I'm representing Miss Annie Gorin of Glasgow. Well, thank you all for coming by. My heavens, what a crowd of people. You want to know a little bit about me? Well, I was born in 1857. My father, you might remember him, was Franklin Gorin. He owned Mammoth Cave at one time. Well, my father was married a couple times before he met my mother. Both of his first wives died. They had lots of children. But then he met my mother. Oh, she was a beautiful thing. Her name was Deborah Putnam Campbell. She was from Cherry Valley, New York, and she was a gracious lady. Well, I had a good childhood with all my half-siblings running around. We got to go to Mammoth Cave a couple times with Father, even though he'd sold it by then. But the love of my life was music. You caught me working on a song right here. From the day I was born, I think I had this music gene. Mother and Father sent me off to a music school. And when I came back, I had converted to Catholicism, and that didn't go over too well with all my family. But Liberty College had opened, and they needed a piano instructor. And I was hired, and I worked with a musicale too. I think our family was one of the very first to have a piano in Glasgow, and you know that piano still exists. Well, life was really good. We had a lot of interesting times until, well, Father died in 1877, and oh, how we missed him. And so my brother Harry and my half-sister Alice moved into our house. We lived over there on Washington Street, right next to Howard Clinic. I taught piano lessons there, and everything was wonderful until then. My mother died. That was in 1900. In 1923, my brother Harry died. He never married either. And in 1824, Alice died. And I was there by myself in that house. It was a good time, though. But there's only one thing sad that happened that I remembered. It kind of reminds me of the cemetery here. You see, we had a big family cemetery behind the house. And there was a lady who lived on the other side of that cemetery, and she had a beautiful garden. She entertained out there a lot. She didn't like looking at tombstones when she had these. And she just pestered me, and finally I just gave up. Called Hatcher and Sadler. They had just opened up this cemetery here. It was called Oddfellows then. It was a rainy day. That woman got out before sunrise even, and she put poles in the ground and strung sheets all the way around so nobody could tell what was happening. I stood in the back door, and I watched them dig up the stones and dig up the remains of all my family, whether it was John and Elizabeth Gorin, my grandparents, my father, my mother, too many to count. I didn't cry much because everybody said I was a jolly sort of a person, but I cried that day. I didn't hear my student come in, and she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Miss Annie, why are you crying?" I said, "Never mind, honey, let's just go get our piano lesson." Well, I died in 1939, and that's some sort of a record. I died 147 years after my father was born. Boy, the time sure has passed. But look, I just talked on, and I've got to get back to this music if I'm going to get this ready to play tomorrow night. So thank you for coming by. I appreciate it so much. Have a good day.
Welcome to my grave site. My name is Adolf Rapp, and I will tell you something of my life. Now, if my speech seems a bit strange, it's because I was not born in America. I was born in Elsbach, Baden, Germany in 1849, a very, very long time ago. In 1854, myself, my two brothers, and mother and father, we came to America to seek a new life. We intended to go to New York. We didn't intend to pass under the Statue of Liberty. It was not finished until 1889. But we intended to go to New York to start a new life, as many, many immigrants did, going to New York. However, our plans did not pan out, shall we say, because a storm came up. We were at sea for 68 days. Rather than New York, we went around Cuba. How did that happen? I do not know. We were very short on all supplies. At the end, is half a pint of water per person. We finally ended up in New Orleans. We had nowhere to go, but Father had a brother who is already settled in Louisville. So we went up the Mississippi River, we went up and over the Ohio River, and came to Louisville. Oh, this was about 1870 or so was when we finally settled in Louisville. I was there for a period of time, went to Shelbyville for a period, Selma, Alabama, did not like that at all. We came back to Louisville. Then I decided to come down to Glasgow. I opened up a bakery, confectionery shop in 1870. It did fairly well. In 1874, I started doing a little photography, print enlargements, nothing serious on the side. 1876, I met a beautiful young girl, Miss Fanny Glass. We got married in 1876 and had 3 lovely children. My son Carl and my daughter Nettie and my daughter Lally. Nettie is here still with me. Lala is still with me here. In 1880, however, I decided to take up photography full-time. I set up a photographic shop on the Glasgow Square and did not only portraits but also pictures of the community of Glasgow, the community of... Here, I show you. These are actual photographs which I took of Glasgow. They may be found in the archives in the University of Louisville in several books of Glasgow, Barron County, South Kentucky history. These are my photographs. I am proud of them. This is a residence, a very stately residence on South Green Street. I believe it's now owned by a family named Doty. This is the brand new Catholic church, which was built by all of the parishioners gathering up stones from the area and collecting them and building their own church by hand. It's brand new, and I'm sure it will last a long time, even though it was not constructed by any professional. This was constructed by a professional. This is the brand new courthouse built in 1904 under the direction and guidance of Judge Bohannon, my good friend. Isn't it beautiful? How did I make these pictures? Aren't they fine? How did I make the portraits, which I'll show you in a minute? We did this not by cell phones, digital cameras. We did not have Walgreens. We did not have Walmart to produce our pictures. We had to do it ourselves. We did it with a big box with the lens on the end and a plate, not a dinner plate, a square plate. We would expose the light through the lens. It would create a negative on the plate. How did we take the negative and then make pictures? Let me tell you how, by what's called albumin prints. Does anyone know what albumin is? Oh, come on, you're educated 21st century people. It is egg white. All of the prints of people and places in the mid-19th century is on egg white. Thank the chicken. That's the reason we have these. It was silver nitrate placed on egg white. Later gelatin was used, but I don't like Jell-O as much as I do eggs. That's how we did that. And that's how we made these photographs, these beautiful photographs of places of Glasgow and Barron County and people of Glasgow and Barron County. I do not know if you can see this too well, but this is a photograph of the Reverend Nathaniel Gorin Terry, who was pastor of the Glasgow Baptist Church in the latter part of the 19th century. You may say, why does he look so sad? Is it because he's a Baptist preacher? Is it because his pants are too tight? No, it's because he cannot move. I have to take photographs when my subjects are absolutely still for up to 8 seconds. You think that is easy? You cannot wink. You can blink, but don't wink. You cannot frown, you cannot smile, you cannot snort, you cannot scratch. Nix for that period of time. You think that is easy? All right, we start. Go. You move. We have to start all over again. I'm sorry, we have a blurred picture. I'm very sorry. I lived a long time. I saw a lot of things. Not as fantastic as what is now and what you're enjoying, but I tried to preserve the memory and the history of the people and the places of Glasgow and Barron County. I only hope and pray that you will do the same thing. Oh, I see now that my time is up and I must pass you on to another. As we say in the old country, auf Wiedersehen.
Once, when I was giving and treating and giving some medicines to a young man who had scarlet fever, eventually he recovered. And his father came and he thanked me. And I told his father, don't thank me. Give your thanks to the Lord. I'm Joseph Sarah Leach. I'm just a physician. I'm just a man. The life that was given to your son was by the Lord, not through me. A lot of times I'm called to homes. I'm there when they're sick, when they're dying. They look to me for help. I tell them at that time, you need to look to the Lord for help too. Sorry. I'm humbled when somebody brings me into their house. I'm honored. I graduated from medical college in 1884, and since that point in time, I am both honored and humbled when people bring me in and ask me to help them. I started as a brakeman on the railroad when I was a young lad, ran the route from Glasgow over to the junction. After that, went on to medical college, started in medical college in Louisville, moved on and finished in Chicago, and then continued my studies all the way up to the East Coast. Glasgow, though, has always been my home. Sorry. When I came back, I married Miss Jean Huggins. She was a beauty and a Southern belle from Barron County. Together we had 3 children, 1 son, Bryce, 2 daughters, Jenny, and Miss, and I never did get the pronunciation on the second daughter's name, I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, you can't see anything. I think it's Annie Laurie. My wife died before I remarried though. I always had an interest in politics, and I've always been a proud Democrat, and I was also proud of the fact that I was elected to 3 consecutive terms as the mayor of Glasgow, the fine city that I've come back to. While I was mayor, I was quite proud of a lot of the accomplishments we got done at that point in time. We improved the roads. We even made concrete sidewalks in town. You can probably see some of the trees that we planted at that time that are still living in town today. During my tenure as mayor, I'm also quite proud of the fact that we got the telephone system up and going and also got the electric plant started. I was also interested in a lot of personal ventures. I was one of the ventures I got into was the telephone company, also in the Glasgow planing mill. And I also got into some real estate ventures as well. First and foremost, though, has been my love for this town and for Barron County. Everything that I always did, I strived to make Barron County a better place. First and foremost, that was on my mind. Chiefly, my life revolved around being a physician and a surgeon. I did that for the most part. I was also involved in some businesses along the way. I was in the Bryson Leach Drug Company, had quite a bit of enjoyment within. I was one of the organizing members of the Barron County Medical Society and served as its first president, along with being in the American Medical Association. Again, everything I always did was to better the opportunity for everybody else and to better everybody's life in this town. I'm quite humbled that you all have chosen me to do this. I thought I led a simple life. I guess it was something that you all wanted to hear about, and thanks for dropping by and listening to me.
Good evening, I'm Ambrose Barlow. Y'all have wakened me from a deep sleep. I was born in the early 1760s, a full decade before the start of our country. I have to say I was honored to serve in the Continental Line of the Virginia Militia under General George Washington. Didn't think about it at the time. It was a great honor when we found out that we formed a new country out of that. I was a sergeant in the infantry. We had a lot of issues at that time keeping our soldiers together. Obviously, we didn't have much food. It was cold out there. So we'd have soldiers that would just kind of stray off during the day and find some firewood, maybe some food. Might have accidentally pick up a chicken off of a local neighbor, bring it back to camp. Some of them, for some reason or another, strayed off and were hunting a female companionship. But the good thing about it was, usually in a couple of days, they came back. The only problem was, if we did meet the enemy, it was a little tough to know who you could count on. But we made it. And the war ended in 1983 with the signing of the Paris Peace Treaty. After that, I was hired by some settlers to help guard their group as they went through the Cumberland Gap. Daniel Boone had blazed this trail into good old Cane Tuck. I thought that was a good place for me to go. I didn't really have any ties there in Virginia. Before I left Virginia, I signed what's been called the 1,000-Name Petition. This was the largest petition that ever had been signed up to that time. And that petition was all about the separation of church and state. We signed that petition and sent it to our government saying that we wanted to be free to worship whoever we wanted to, that we wanted to separate from the Church of England, which had been established as the Church of the state. And I'm really proud to have my name on that petition as well. But then I went to guarding settlers coming through the Gap, and I met a young lady named Sarah Ann Smith. I have to say I'd known her for quite a while. She was my cousin. But we married. We had 5 children. John, James, Ambrose, Elizabeth Jane, and Ann. We ended up going to Danville, Kentucky for a few years. Stayed there till 1801. And I heard about a place called the Barrens. Didn't know much about it, but I was a farmer, trader, had livestock quite a bit. So we ended up coming to a place down near Boyd's Creek in Barron County. A lot of open land, wasn't used to that coming through the Gap and where we'd lived before. Tall grass, beautiful country. Thankfully, we settled here. and it really treated us well. One of the things that my family and I did on a regular basis, we'd take our goods and our produce and what we had made, our animals and things, and we'd catch a ferry over at Fountain Run and literally ride the Little Barren River and then on into the Green River and then on into the Ohio River and all the way down the Mississippi River to New Orleans. We did that on a flat boat, if you can imagine that, but we made it. It was often said of me that I had the grain of metal and hardness that characterized the early settlers of our frontier. I'm proud of that. I guess I'm most proud of the fact that I've still got descendants here. We have a cemetery out in North Barren County in the Salem church community where my son is buried, my grandson is buried, quite a few of my family, and there's actually some members, direct descendants of the family that still farm near that area. But I'm really honored that you came by to hear our story. I'm very proud that I settled in Barren County. It's a great farming area, and I'd love to, if you need to visit, maybe you can talk to some of my descendants in the future. Thank you very much.
Good evening. About 10 years ago, I attended a meeting in the basement of the Methodist Church, and at that meeting I pledged $25,000 to go with a building fund that had already been started to build a hospital here in Glasgow. And in reality, they took that money and completed the building fund. In fact, completed the hospital in a little less than 2 years, which is pretty remarkable. Then they took my name and identified the hospital as the T.J. Sampson Community Hospital. What a wonderful service it's rendering to this area here. I am so proud to be associated with that. In fact, I wrote President Roosevelt and invited him down to go through the hospital and to see the biggest little city in the world. I told him that if he didn't come down, that I would come to Washington and explain what we were doing down here. And you know, I would love to go to, I've never been to Washington, but I've always dreamed about going up and meeting the representatives and our senators and the president and just sharing our beautiful country and then trying to get them to come down this way. I told him that if he would come down, that I would host him through the hospital, and boy, that would be a dream. Actually, I'm totally lost. But actually, Glasgow I consider as my adopted home. My family was from Tennessee. About 50 years ago, they moved up to Fountain Run. I came on up to Glasgow and started the Sampson Tobacco Company. Built a factory, in fact, right over the hill here on Front Street, just a couple blocks north of the depot. We employed about 150 people at that time and developed a product called the Sampson Tobacco Twist. And it became very, very popular and well known in this area. But my interest, I was still young and my interest was straying, and I become very interested in oil. So I sold the tobacco company and become president of the Star Oil and Gas Company, and was actually on the board of several other oil companies at the time. So pretty busy fella. And then the farms down at Lucas. Was farming at the same time, a little over 900 acres of just choice farmland. So it's been very, very busy and active along that way, but my real interest and concern has been the community itself. That's where I've given all my time, my energy, and my love. It's, I mean, what good is success if you can't share it with the people that you care about and the community that you live in? Actually, I was in the community. I was very active. I was a member of just about in health offices in about all the civic clubs. Of course, was on the board of the hospital, was on the board of the bank, trustee of the school system, several different organizations, and we accomplished so much with help of everybody, but yet there's a lot to be done. in Kentucky, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in Glasgow. You know, here I am now, 69 years old. I've never married, no children, but I've always considered my church family at First Christian Church as my family. But really, I'm a member of a much larger group, a much larger family, and that's the whole community. And like I said, if you can't work with your community and give back to what has been so good to you, then what good is it all anyway? I'm right now planning on a library. I've already set the land aside down at the corner of Washington and Race Street, hauling rock in, some special rock. You should see the rock. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful building. But we still got to raise about $75,000, so we'll see how that goes. Who would have thought last year, 1935, that the American Legion would have honored me by selecting me as the Outstanding Citizen of the Year. Such a I feel undeserving honor, but really appreciate such a thing. It's I'm going. Oh gosh, I know y'all got other places to go, so I'm going to let you go, and I'm sure we'll be seeing some more of you. After all, we got to raise $75,000, and so I'm going to step back just a little, or step forward in time. My pocket watch here was passed down through the Walbrook family from my great uncle, who was T.J. Simpson. So this was his watch, and we prize that. Actually, it belongs to my son now. And as a side note, I also have the billfold that we affectionately called Uncle Tom that he had on him when he died down in Lucas. So some good connection there. But I've enjoyed being with you all, and again, we'll see you before long. Enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. I am Julia Franklin Howard. My parents, Susan Saunders and Garland Franklin Garland Franklin moved to the land and settled where my great-grandfather Crenshaw lives, who fought in the War of 1812. I attended a one-room school, and when I left there, I went to Bowling Green to the Teachers College and came back to that one-room school to teach. I was also the primary supervisor at a Methodist boarding school located in London, Kentucky. I helped to form the first Parent-Teacher Association here in Glasgow and served as its president for 1 year. I then went on to be the president of the district PTA here that consisted of 13 counties. On November the 25th, 1914, I was proud to become the bride of Carl Clifford Howard. He was a doctor and very dedicated to medicine. As his devoted wife, I helped him to write speeches to help establish the state tuberculosis hospitals and to receive scholarships to help encourage other doctors to move into this area. And then, of course, there is the Howard Clinic. We were blessed with 4 girls. Mildred, who became an English professor at Western. Carolyn, who is a doctor at the Howard Clinic. Lois, who married a contractor, and Mary Lloyd, who has decided that she is best at home as a wife and mother to 3 children. And then, of course, Ma Jew, as the grandchildren call me, and Daddy Howard are very proud of our grandchildren as well. In 1947, I was awarded the Kentucky Mother of the Year. I am very blessed with the life that I have lived and would like to leave you with some sage advice. Speak softly, if at all, and carve your words before they fall. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and I bid you all good evening.
Good evening. My footstone here says William Dickinson, 2nd Lieutenant, Confederate States Army. And I am William Dickinson. And I did spend some time as a Confederate soldier, but I was also a politician, an elected official, and a lawyer. And so, nothing I say can be trusted. It also means that I can be a little bit long-winded, so if somebody wants to stop me, you go ahead and try. Let me put this a little bit in perspective. My grandfather was the first Dickinson in Barron County, Benjamin Temple Dickinson. He moved to this area with his brother in the 1790s, and he set up a farm out on fallen timber, probably not too far from Mr. Ambrose Barlow's farm, not very many miles, although a few miles was a long way in those days. Benjamin Temple had 4 children by his first wife, Betsy Harris, including my father, Thomas Childs Dickinson. And then Betsy Harris died after the 4th child was born. They did that a lot in those days. And my grandfather took to drink. Bad to drink. So bad that the court took his children away from him and put them out as indentured servants. And my father, Thomas Childs, was indentured to a blacksmith, William Browning. Mr. Browning had his blacksmith shop over on the corner of East Main and South Lewis Street, right next to the Dickinson Greer house. Now, he started out learning blacksmith, but he didn't stay a blacksmith long. My father became a teller at the First National Bank, and that turned out to be a good move. Before long, he was married to the daughter of the bank president, and by the time he died, he was president of the bank himself. But now, he and I did not see eye to eye all the time. Tell you a story about that. How many of you have heard of the Orphan Brigade? Well, how many have heard of the Civil War? In the Civil War, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, in its infinite wisdom, did not secede from the Union. And so Kentucky did not officially send any soldiers to the Confederate Army. But there were many of us that felt strongly about the Southern principles and the Southern side. And many joined the 1st Kentucky Brigade over at Bowling Green. That was being started by John C. Breckinridge. Now, Breckinridge was a Kentuckian and a very popular man. He'd been Speaker of the House. He was and still is the youngest vice president this country has ever had. And he ran for president. Had just recently run for president along with some other folks like Stephen A. Douglas and Abraham Lincoln. Mr. Breckinridge came in 3rd. Anyway, he started the 1st Kentucky Brigade over in Bowling Green, and I decided I was going to join. I was 15 years old. I told my father I was going to join, and he told me no, I wasn't either. Well, I was pretty headstrong in those days, and we lived in the Dickinson Greer house at that time. That's where I grew up. And he locked me in the 2nd story bedroom to keep me there. But he forgot that I was 15 and could climb out windows like a monkey. And I climbed out that 2nd story bedroom. You can still see the window. It's on the side facing the square, and it's on the one closest to the street. Climbed out that window, and I went to Bowling Green, and I did not come home until the end of the war. I joined the 1st Kentucky Brigade. I joined the 6th Kentucky Infantry part of it. And it wasn't long before we headed to Shiloh. I was in the Battle of Shiloh. I was in the Battle of Vicksburg, the Siege of Vicksburg. I was in the Battle of Stones River, sometimes called the Battle of Murfreesboro. That's where we got our nickname, the Orphan Brigade. We were under the command of General Breckinridge, but we were also under the command of General Braxton Bragg. Maybe you've heard about him. During the Battle of Stones River, General Bragg ordered us to charge up a hill. General Breckinridge thought it was too well defended. General Bragg said, "I don't care, I want you to charge it anyway." But we charged. And we lost a lot of men that night. And I heard General Breckinridge riding among the survivors, saying, "My poor orphans. My poor orphans." I lost some friends that night. After that, I was in other battles. Battle of Missionary Ridge, Battle of Chickamauga. Finally headed down to Atlanta. You think this is hot tonight? You try being in Atlanta with General William Tecumseh Sherman bearing down on you, setting fire to everything in sight. I was at the Battle of Jonesboro, which is not far outside of Atlanta. And in fact, I became a prisoner of war at the Battle of Jonesboro. Now, I wasn't a prisoner long. I came back to my unit after a prisoner exchange after about a month. And they sent me to Corinth, first to get a horse, and then they sent me back to Kentucky to try to recruit. But after the Battle of Atlanta and after Lincoln had won re-election, it was kind of hard to get recruits. Before I could get back to my unit, General Lee had surrendered at Appomattox. I tried to get back to my unit to surrender with them. I couldn't do it. They surrendered in Georgia. I surrendered in Nashville, Tennessee. And on May 31st, 1865, it was hard, but I took an oath of loyalty to the United States of America. I came back to Glasgow. I was about 20. I ran for circuit court clerk. Now I should mention that I'm one of the few of the Orphan Brigade that not only lived but never was wounded. And let me tell you, that came up in the election. Why wasn't he wounded? Was he yeller? And I'll tell you, like I told them, it was good planning, self-preservation, in the hand of the Almighty. Well, I won that election, and I was circuit court clerk, and I watched the lawyer's law in front of the judge for about 4 years. And I thought to myself, shoot, I can do this. So I read for the law. I studied, practiced law in Louisville for a brief time, and came back to Glasgow. Now, I married a young woman named Mary Elizabeth Brents, and we set up our first house in a house that's still here. It's over on the corner of Leslie Avenue and Cleveland Avenue, the brick house right by the triangle. And there's a little outbuilding, a brick outbuilding right by Leslie Avenue, and that was my law office. We had 4 children, Brents, Day, Annie, and Bartlett. And we decided we needed a bigger house, so I built another house that's also still standing, 601 South Green Street. You got huge 2-story columns on it. Currently occupied by Mr. D.T. Froge and family. And I lived in that house till I died in 1890. Now, none of my sons were lawyers, but one of my grandsons, 3 of my great-grandsons are lawyers. Sometimes these horrible diseases skip a generation. But my 3 sons were businessmen. They had their hand in everything. They had the ice plant, they had the electric plant, they had a car dealership. Not one of them drove a car, but they sold them. and they had a warehouse right up here by the depot, big brick warehouse right down on Main Street. They used to call Lower Depot Street. And that stood until just a few years ago. And let me tell you, when they tore that down, I could hear it over here. I could feel it in my bones. I've got, I can't count anymore, at least 150 descendants. Many still in this town, lawyers, doctors, engineers, college professors, everything under the sun, homemakers. And they've all served in many of them have served in the armed forces, every branch of it, Army, Navy, Marines, pilots. We couldn't even imagine what a pilot was. And I've got descendants flying those planes for the Air Force. So I may have fought against the United States of America, and maybe that was wrong, and maybe it was for not the best reasons. But I'd like to think my descendants have made up for it. After 120 years here, I'm a little stiff. I'm gonna let y'all go on and lay back down over here. Thank you all for coming.